I used to think that love was a fortress, a place where I felt safe and cherished. My wife Jessica and I built that fortress over the years, brick by brick, through shared laughs, support during tough times, and a promise to stick together no matter what. We had even bought a beautiful house in a nice neighborhood, which we spent weekends renovating and decorating. It was supposed to be our sanctuary. But lately, cracks began to appear, and those cracks led to a gaping hole that would change everything. At first it was subtle. Jessica started coming home late frequently, always with a flimsy excuse. "Sorry, honey, work ran late," or "I had drinks with the girls." I brushed it off, convincing myself that she was just busy with her job. I mean, she was ambitious, and I admired that about her. But there was an anxious pit in my stomach that grew each day, whispering that something wasn't right. I began noticing other changes, too. Jessica became more secretive with her phone, always turning it face down when she was around me. I caught her scrolling through messages with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And there was an unusual tension in the air whenever I asked her about her day. The woman who used to share everything with me now seemed to be living a double life, and that realization gnawed at my mind. One evening, my curiosity turned into desperation. I was cleaning up in our home office when I stumbled upon a receipt buried under some papers. It was for a hotel near downtown, dated a few days earlier. My heart raced as I flipped it over, half expecting to find something benign, but I didn't. The name on the receipt wasn't mine. It was a name I didn't recognize, and that's when everything spiraled. I felt sick. My instincts had been right all along. The next day I confronted her. I waited until she got home from work, my heart pounding in my chest. I had rehearsed my words, but nothing could prepare me for what I was about to face. "Jessica, we need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Her demeanor shifted instantly, the smile faded, and I could see her walls going up. "What's wrong?" she asked, feigning innocence. I threw the receipt on the table, and the way her eyes widened told me everything. "Who is Tom?" I demanded. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. "Tom? I don't know anyone named Tom," she replied, but there was a tremor in her voice. The way she tried to evade my gaze made my blood boil. I pressed further, my anger bubbling over. "Cut the crap, Jessica. This is a hotel receipt. You need to tell me the truth." Her facade cracked. Okay. I went out for drinks and things just escalated. But it didn't mean anything. It was a mistake. Her words felt like daggers piercing through my chest. I could see the guilt in her eyes, and yet she was still trying to downplay it. How could she say it didn't mean anything? I had trusted her with my heart, my life, and she had tossed it aside like it was worthless. The confrontation morphed into a chaotic exchange filled with half-truths and desperate lies. Her excuses tumbled out like a broken record, each one more ridiculous than the last. I was screaming, she was crying, and the entire foundation of our relationship felt like it was crumbling around us. I had never seen her so vulnerable yet so defiant at the same time. Was this the woman I had married? As the night wore on, I was left feeling hollow. My mind raced with memories of our life together, intermingled with flashes of betrayal. I felt furious, betrayed, and utterly lost. There was a cold realization creeping in. The fortress I had built was under siege, and I didn't know how to defend it. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about the years of loyalty I thought I had received in return. I needed time to think, to process everything. This wasn't just about her betrayal. It was about my shattered pride and the future we had envisioned together. I was standing at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. I had a decision to make, and that decision would define not just my future, but the future of the woman who had broken my heart. The emotional roller coaster was just beginning, and I had no idea how deep this wound would cut or how far I would go to heal it. After that night, everything felt different. The house that once felt like a home now felt like a prison, each corner echoing with the memories of laughter that had turned to silence. Jessica moved through the rooms like a ghost, avoiding eye contact, her presence a constant reminder of the betrayal. I spent hours in silence, replaying the confrontation in my head, desperately searching for a way to untangle the mess that had become our lives. The days that followed felt like a haze. I went to work, but my mind was nowhere near the office. I could barely focus on tasks, my thoughts constantly drifting back to Jessica and the affair. The more I thought about it, the more furious I became. I had given her everything, and she had thrown it all away for a fleeting thrill. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have ever imagined. Eventually, I decided I needed to take control of the situation. I couldn't just sit back and let her dictate the narrative any longer. I started by digging deeper. I needed to know the full extent of her betrayal. Late nights at the office, drinks with friends, I began to piece together her schedule and where she claimed to be. Every time she left the house, I found myself trying to figure out if she was really where she said she was. One afternoon, as I scrolled through her social media, I noticed a series of photos that made my stomach turn. They were taken at a bar downtown, the same one where her hotel receipt was from. She was smiling, laughing, and clinking glasses with a group of friends I'd never met. But what caught my eye was a man standing next to her, his arm draped around her shoulder, a grin plastered on his face. My heart sank. This Tom was real, and he was much closer than I had anticipated. Fueled by anger and a thirst for vengeance, I began gathering evidence. I contacted a private investigator, a friend of a friend who specialized in infidelity cases. It felt surreal giving someone money to track my wife, but I felt justified. I needed proof, something solid that I could confront her with. The thought of confronting her again, armed with undeniable evidence, sent chills down my spine. After a week, the investigator called with the details. He informed me that Jessica had been meeting Tom regularly, sometimes at that very hotel, and that their rendezvous had been ongoing for months. Each revelation felt like a punch to the gut. My world was crumbling, and I was left standing amidst the wreckage of everything I thought I knew. When I returned home that night, I had a plan brewing in my mind. I needed to make her feel the weight of her actions, to understand the impact of what she had done. I had spent enough time as the victim. Now it was time for me to take back my power. I decided I would use the evidence not just as a weapon, but as a way to shape my own narrative, to reclaim my sense of worth. The following day, I confronted her again. This time I was calm but steely. I had gathered the evidence, the photos, the receipts, and a detailed timeline of her affair. I laid it all out on the kitchen table like a poker player revealing his hand. Her eyes widened in horror as she processed what I was doing. "Jessica, I know everything," I said, my voice steady. "You think you can continue this charade? I have proof of your betrayal. You've been lying to me for months." Her facade fell apart instantly. "How dare you? You had no right to spy on me," she shouted, her voice laced with panic, but there was no backing out now. I was standing firm, and I wouldn't let her gaslight me into feeling guilty for wanting the truth. She floundered for excuses, desperately trying to salvage her story. "You don't understand. It was just physical. It meant nothing," she cried, tears streaming down her face. But her words felt hollow, and I could see the fear in her eyes. She was losing control, and I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. I let her rant, her excuses falling on deaf ears. I was no longer interested in what she had to say. I had lost my trust in her, and it was clear that the love we once shared had been replaced by a thirst for revenge. This was my moment. I could either walk away and allow her to continue living her life, or flip the script and make her understand how deeply she had hurt me. As she continued to plead her case, I interrupted her. "I need to think about what I want, Jessica. This isn't just about us anymore. You've taken everything from me, my trust, my pride, and my happiness. I'm not sure I can ever forgive you for this." I left her standing in the kitchen, the weight of my words hanging heavily in the air. I felt a rush of adrenaline, knowing that I had taken back some control, but deep down, I was still wrestling with my emotions. I had wanted to hurt her, to make her feel the pain she caused me, but I also knew that there was no easy way forward. The emotional fallout from this confrontation would linger long after I had left the room. As I lay awake that night, I couldn't shake the doubt that gnawed at me. Was I doing the right thing? Was revenge worth the cost of my own peace? The answers eluded me, but I knew one thing. I was ready to fight for my future, whatever that meant. The days following my confrontation with Jessica felt like a blur. I had opened Pandora's box, and now I was left grappling with the chaos that ensued. She tried to reach out, sending texts filled with apologies and pleas for another chance, but I was resolute. I had given her enough chances. She had shattered our trust, and there was no easy way to rebuild it. I immersed myself in work, trying to drown out the noise of my emotions. My colleagues noticed my distraction, but I brushed off their concerns, insisting I was just busy. I couldn't afford to show weakness. I had to stay focused on what I wanted next. The investigator had suggested that I consider my options carefully before making any decisions about our future. It was advice I took to heart. One evening, after another long day at the office, I returned home to find Jessica sitting on the couch, her eyes puffy from crying. She looked vulnerable, but I couldn't let that sway me. I had to stay strong. "We need to talk," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "Please just hear me out," she pleaded, her tone desperate. "I know I messed up, but I want to fix this. I love you, I love us. Can't we work through this?" The words hit me like a slap. Love, how could she say? After everything. "You've shown me what love isn't, Jessica," I replied coldly. "You've chosen to betray me for your own selfish needs. I'm not sure I can ever reconcile that." She tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. I couldn't allow myself to be swayed by her tears. "Look, I've been doing some thinking," I continued, "and I need to lay down some ground rules if we're going to have any hope of moving forward." She nodded, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "What do you want me to do?" "I'll do anything," she said, and I could see the sincerity in her expression, but I knew it was too late for that. I laid it out. "First, I want complete transparency. I need access to your phone, your messages, and your social media. I need to know that you're not hiding anything from me." Jessica's face fell. "That's not fair. You can't trust me but expect me to give up my privacy." "It's not about trust, it's about rebuilding that trust," I shot back. "If you want this marriage to work, you need to prove to me that you're committed. You need to show me you're willing to do whatever it takes to make things right." Over the next few days, I watched Jessica struggle to meet my demands. She had always been fiercely independent, and the idea of relinquishing control was difficult for her. I could see the turmoil in her expression, and I felt a pang of guilt, but I quickly shoved it aside. This was part of the process. She had to feel the weight of her actions. As moments turned into days, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. I felt empowered by my decisions, yet I was still grappling with the remnants of love I had for her. Every time I saw her, I was reminded of the woman I had married, the woman who had promised to stand by my side through thick and thin. But now, all I felt was betrayal. Then came the day when everything shifted again. I had planned a meeting with the investigator to discuss the next steps I could take to ensure I was prepared for whatever came next. As I sat in the dimly lit coffee shop, he laid out options: separation, therapy, or even a more permanent ending to the marriage. The thought of divorce sent shivers through me, but I also felt a sense of relief. It was a way to reclaim my life, to break free from the shackles of betrayal. When I returned home that evening, I found Jessica packing the living room, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. "We need to talk," she said, her voice shaking slightly. I could see panic etched on her face. "What now?" I replied, bracing myself for more excuses. "I've been thinking about everything," she started, glancing down at her phone. "I know I messed up, and I've been talking to someone, a therapist." The admission caught me off guard. "A therapist?" I echoed, surprised. "You're actually taking this seriously?" "Yes, I want to understand why I did what I did. I need help to figure out how to fix this, how to fix us," she explained, her voice gaining strength. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the turning point, but doubt crept in. "And what about Tom?" I asked, narrowing my eyes. "Is he still in the picture?" She shook her head vehemently. "No, I swear, I cut things off the moment I realized how much I was hurting you. I want to be better. I want to be the person you deserve." The sincerity in her voice was palpable, but my heart remained guarded. "Actions speak louder than words, Jessica. You need to show me you're serious about this. I can't just take your word for it." She nodded, understanding the gravity of her situation. I felt an unexpected surge of empathy, but quickly tempered it with caution. This was the moment I needed to stand firm, to ensure that I didn't fall into the familiar trap of forgiving too easily. As the weeks continued to unfold, I found myself in a delicate dance with my emotions. On one hand, I was angry and hurt, and on the other, I felt a small flicker of hope that maybe we could salvage something from the wreckage. And yet, the question loomed large in my mind. Was it worth it? Could I ever truly forgive her? The emotional roller coaster was far from over, and I was left wondering if I was ready to step into the unknown or if it was time to finally close the door on our life together. The weeks dragged on like a heavy fog, with each day blending into the next. Jessica was doing everything she could to prove her commitment to change. She was attending therapy regularly, and while she didn't share all the details, I could see the effort she was putting into her personal growth. She started volunteering for community service, took up yoga classes, and even initiated couples therapy sessions. It was like she was trying to rebuild herself from the ground up, but I remained skeptical. Every time we sat down for our therapy sessions, I felt the air thick with unspoken tension. Our therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Ellis, tried to facilitate open conversations between us, but I often found myself feeling resentful. The wounds from the betrayal ran too deep, and it was hard to shift my focus from what had been lost to what could potentially be rebuilt. Jessica would sit there, tears in her eyes, as she expressed regret and remorse. I wanted to feel compassion for her, but all I could think about was how easily she had thrown our life away. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, I returned home feeling emotionally drained. Jessica was waiting for me, her face a mix of anxiety and anticipation. "I think we need to talk about our future," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I knew this conversation was coming, but I wasn't prepared for the weight it carried. "What future, Jessica? Do you mean the one you almost destroyed?" I snapped, my anger bubbling to the surface. She took a deep breath, clearly trying to remain composed. "No, I mean the future we could still have. I want us to move forward together, but I need to know if you're willing to let go of the past." Her words struck a chord, and I felt a moment of vulnerability wash over me. "Let go? You expect me to just forget what you did?" I shot back, frustration lacing my voice. "Not forget," she replied, her eyes pleading. "But if we're going to make this work, we need to find a way to move past it. We can't keep living in this limbo, and I don't want to keep hurting you." I crossed my arms, weighing her words. Part of me wanted to cling to my anger, to use it as fuel, but there was another part that yearned for closure, for a resolution. A future together seemed like an impossible dream, yet here we were, standing on the precipice of that very decision. "I'll try," I finally confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. "But it's going to take time, Jessica. I can't just flip a switch and act like everything is fine." She nodded, relief washing over her features. "I understand, and I'm willing to do the work. I'll be patient. I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm serious about making this right." That night marked a turning point. It was the first time in weeks that I felt a flicker of hope amidst the wreckage. But just as I began to entertain the notion of reconciliation, the universe threw another curveball my way. A few days later, I received a call from the private investigator. My heart dropped as I answered the phone, sensing that he had more information to share. "I have something important to discuss regarding Jessica," he said, his tone serious. My stomach churned. "What is it?" "I've been monitoring her activities since we last spoke. I've noticed some irregularities," he explained, and my heart raced as he detailed the latest findings. It turned out that Jessica had been meeting with Tom again. Not only had they been in contact, but they had also seen each other multiple times over the past month. It felt like a punch to the gut. The very thing I had feared the most was happening right in front of my eyes. The betrayal I thought I had begun to heal from was still thriving, and I felt like a fool. I hung up the phone, trembling with a mix of disbelief and anger. This was the moment I had dreaded, the moment when I had to confront her once again. I steeled myself, knowing I had to approach this carefully. I needed to gather my evidence, and then I would bring the truth to light. Later that evening, when Jessica came home, I confronted her in the kitchen, my heart pounding in my chest. "We need to talk." "I just got off the phone with the investigator," I said. My voice steady but cold, her expression shifted, fear flashing across her face. "What did he say?" she asked, her voice quaking. I placed the investigator's notes on the table and watched as she scanned the pages. "You've been seeing Tom again," I said, my voice low and dangerous. How long has this been going on? Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head. It's not what you think, I swear I was trying to end it for good. I thought I could handle it. Handle what? I shouted, frustration boiling over. You think you can just pick and choose when to be faithful? You've shattered my trust beyond repair, Jessica. You can't keep doing this to me. I felt rage boiling in my veins as she stumbled over her words, her excuses falling flat. I was confused. I didn't know how to cope. I thought that maybe if I could just see him one last time, it would finally help me move on. Move on from what? From me. From our marriage. I shot back, unable to contain the hurt that laced my words. You don't get to hurt me again and expect me to just accept it. Jessica fell silent, the reality of her actions sinking in. I stood there, my heart racing, knowing that this was the tipping point. I had given her chances, and each time she had squandered them. This was not just a mistake, it was a pattern that had become all too familiar. As she continued to cry, I felt a surge of clarity wash over me. I had to protect myself. I needed to make a choice. Either I could keep fighting for a future that seemed increasingly improbable, or I could finally walk away and reclaim my life. Just as I was about to voice my decision, I felt a sense of finality take hold. This time, there would be no more chances. I had to put myself first. As I stood there, watching Jessica break down in front of me, I knew that the time had come to make a choice that would alter both of our futures forever. I stood there, staring at Jessica as she broke down in front of me, the weight of her betrayal hanging heavily in the air. My heart ached as tears streamed down her face, but I couldn't afford to let my emotions cloud my judgment any longer. The time for understanding and second chances had passed. I had tried to be patient and listen, but each revelation felt like a fresh wound, reopening old scars. Jessica, I began, my voice steady but firm, this isn't just about you anymore. This is about me, and I need to take care of myself. I've tried to forgive you, but you keep giving me reasons to doubt you. I can't keep doing this. Her sobs intensified, and I felt a pang of sympathy. Please, she cried, desperation in her voice. I'm willing to do anything. I'll go to more therapy. I'll cut everyone out of my life. Just please don't leave me. For a fleeting moment, I considered her words. I thought about the good times we'd shared, the life we'd built together. But then the image of her laughing with Tom, the betrayal of our vows, flickered in my mind. She had broken my trust, and the foundation of our relationship had been shattered beyond repair. Do you understand what you've done? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. You've chosen to betray me time and time again. Love isn't just words, it's action. And every time you went back to him, you made a choice. Your choice was to hurt me. I can't live like this anymore. I watched as realization washed over her features and her pleas turned to a quiet acceptance. I know I've messed up, but I thought you'd understand that I was lost, she whispered, her words barely audible. I've been trying to figure out who I am without you. Then you need to figure that out on your own, I replied, my heart heavy with the weight of my decision. I can't be your emotional crutch any longer. You need to take responsibility for your actions, and I need to take care of myself. Jessica fell silent, her shoulders trembling as she processed my words. I felt a deep sadness wash over me as I realized this was truly the end of our journey together. The love we once shared was buried beneath layers of deceit, and I wasn't sure if it could ever be revived. I'm sorry, she finally said, her voice breaking. I never meant to hurt you. I don't know how to fix this. You can start by letting me go, I replied, forcing myself to remain resolute. I'm done trying to make sense of your actions. I need to move forward, and that means I need to separate myself from this toxic situation. The finality of my words hung heavily in the air. Jessica looked crushed, her face a mask of sorrow. I wanted to reach out and comfort her, but I knew that would only send mixed signals. I had to stay strong, even as my heart broke at the thought of saying goodbye to the life we had built together. Over the next few days, I began the process of untangling our lives. I talked to a lawyer about separation options, and I began to look for a new place to live. It felt surreal, like I was moving in slow motion, but I knew that this was the right path for me. I needed to reclaim my sense of self, to rediscover who I was outside of our marriage. Jessica moved out of the bedroom, and we began living like strangers under one. It was painful to see her struggle with the reality of our situation. I wanted to feel anger towards her, but I couldn't help but feel compassion for the person I had once loved. I had to remind myself that this was a choice I had made for my own well-being. Eventually, the day came when I found a small apartment nearby. It was modest, but it felt like a fresh start. I spent hours moving my things, sorting through memories, and packing away reminders of a life that was no longer mine. Each box I filled felt like a weight being lifted off my shoulders. As I settled into my new space, I took a moment to reflect on everything that had transpired. I had gone from a loving husband to a man facing the wreckage of his marriage. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but I was beginning to feel a sense of clarity and resolve. I had taken the reins of my life back, and though it hurt, I was moving forward. Jessica reached out a few times during that period, asking to meet and talk things through. I considered her messages, but ultimately decided against it. I needed space. I couldn't risk reopening wounds that were still raw. I needed to focus on healing and rebuilding my life without her. In the months that followed, I found strength in my solitude. I began exercising regularly, took up new hobbies, and sought out supportive friends who helped me navigate my feelings. I even started dating again, cautiously approaching the idea of love and companionship. It was liberating to rediscover who I was outside of my identity as Jessica's husband. One night, as I lay in bed reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized that I had learned a valuable lesson. I needed to prioritize my own happiness and well-being above all else. The betrayal, while painful, had forced me to confront my own vulnerabilities and ultimately emerge stronger. As I looked toward the future, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I was ready to embrace it. No longer would I be a victim of someone else's choices. I was reclaiming my narrative, and for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful about where my life was headed. I had taken her future. But in doing so, I had given myself the gift of a new beginning. As the weeks turned into months, I settled into my new life with a sense of purpose. I had transformed the pain from my past into fuel for personal growth. I started focusing on my career, diving headfirst into projects that had long been on the back burner. My colleagues noticed the change in me. I was more engaged, more driven. The energy I had once poured into my troubled marriage was now redirected toward my professional aspirations. I also cultivated new friendships and reconnected with old ones. I began spending time with friends I hadn't seen in years, and it felt refreshing to laugh and enjoy life without the weight of betrayal hanging over my head. They were supportive and encouraging, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of belonging that didn't rely on someone else's love or approval. One evening, a friend invited me to a local art exhibit. I hesitated at first, still feeling the sting of mistrust when it came to new relationships, but I decided to go. It turned out to be a transformative experience. Surrounded by creative energy and vibrant people, I felt alive. I met Sarah there, an outgoing art teacher with a contagious laugh and a genuine interest in others. We struck up a conversation that flowed effortlessly, and before I knew it, we were exchanging numbers. As we began dating, I found myself navigating the complexities of a new relationship with caution. I was upfront about my past, sharing the lessons I had learned through my experience with Jessica. Sarah was understanding and supportive, and I couldn't help but feel a connection that ignited a sense of hope within me. It felt liberating to open my heart again, though I remained vigilant, mindful of the scars that still lingered. Every time we shared a fun date or a simple evening at home, I felt more like myself again. I was learning to trust, to love, and to embrace vulnerability without the fear of betrayal hovering over me. It wasn't always easy, and there were moments of hesitation when I would catch myself second-guessing my choices. But Sarah was patient, and slowly, I began to realize that not every relationship had to be defined by the mistakes of the past. Meanwhile, Jessica remained a ghost in the background. We exchanged texts occasionally, mostly about logistical matters involving our separation. She seemed to be trying to rebuild her life as well, attending therapy and focusing on her own self-discovery. I felt a strange mix of wishes for her success and relief that I no longer had to shoulder the burden of her choices. I had learned that while I could empathize with her journey, my own happiness had to take precedence. One day, while cleaning out my storage unit, I stumbled upon a box filled with memorabilia from my life with Jessica, photos, letters, and little trinkets that once held sentimental value. As I rifled through the contents, memories flooded back. I felt a wave of nostalgia, but it was different this time. Rather than the pain of betrayal, I found a sense of closure. I realized that while those memories were part of my story, they didn't define who I was now. In a moment of clarity, I decided to let go. I took the box to a local park, where I found a quiet spot under a tree. I opened it one last time, allowing myself to reflect on the good times and the lessons learned before gently placing everything back inside. I lit a match and watched as the flames consumed the past, my heart swelling with a bittersweet acknowledgement of what had been and what was to come. As the smoke curled up into the sky, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. I was no longer tethered to that life. I had embarked on a journey of healing, and I was finally ready to embrace the future without the burden of what once was. In the months that followed, my relationship with Sarah blossomed. We traveled together, explored new hobbies, and built a foundation based on honesty and open communication. I found joy in the little things, sharing a meal, going for walks, or simply enjoying quiet moments together. With every smile, every laugh, I felt more whole. One evening, as we watched the sunset from a hilltop overlooking the city, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Sarah turned to me, her eyes reflecting the vibrant colors of the sky, and I realized that I had found a love that felt authentic and genuine. "Thank you for being patient with me," I said, feeling a surge of gratitude. "I know I haven't been easy." She smiled softly, reaching for my hand. "You've been through a lot. I admire your strength to move forward." As we sat there, hand in hand, I knew that I had emerged from the shadows of my past and into a future filled with possibility. I reflected on the journey I had taken, the lessons I had learned, and the strength I had discovered within myself. It wasn't just about taking back my pride. It was about reclaiming my life, my happiness, and learning to love again. I had taken her future, but in the process, I had also found my own. The pain of the past would always be a part of me, but it no longer defined who I was or who I could become. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, and this time I would do it on my own terms.